Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here because we have a really, really special guest today. I can hardly stand it. Dani Donovan, who wrote The Anti-Planner, which is like, I swear to you, the best book ever for ADHD. Like, it is an ADHD must-have for real. And I'm so honored to have her on the show today. So welcome, Dani.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself.
So let's see. I've collected so many, I would say, job titles over the years now that I joke that I feel like one of those Helvetica shirts that's like noun and noun and noun and noun. But to sum it up the best I can, right? I was a graphic designer for 15 years, and illustrator, and who collected a bunch of art related hobbies, lettering and watercolor and all that jazz. And then made an ADHD comic, ADHD storytelling, based off a inside joke with a friend, and posted it, and it went viral. And so I started making more ADHD comics, kind of just describing my experience, and using a lot of visual metaphors. Ended up making some TikToks, and then stumbled my way into making a book called The Anti-Planner: How to Get Shit Done When You Don't Feel Like It. And as a kind of toolbox of my own coping strategies that I've collected over the years. And now I have founded and I'm the CEO of my own company called The Anti-Boring Project.
The Anti-Boring Project? Oh my gosh, that's so fun. I love it. I love it. Well, in your book, you can tell you're a graphic designer because it's got that very comic book feel to it, but it's fun and cash, so it's not overly formal. It's something you can dig into and just really use versus books that you read from cover to cover. Well, and I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about at the beginning of the book, you talk a little bit about how this is not a planner. In fact, it's not intended to be used every day. And so I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, definitely. So it's been really funny because they don't know what to refer to it as, because people call it a planner, and I'm like, no, it's the anti-planner, right? Because I didn't like the idea of calling it like a workbook, because the thing is also you don't have to write. There's stuff you could fill out if you want, but you don't have to write in it to get stuff out of this. You could not write. A lot of people have told me that they like it. It's too pretty to write in, even though I have a thing that addresses that at the beginning.
You have a whole
thing that's directly responding to all of the thoughts that I know you're already about to have about how I never stick with anything, and I'm just going to lose it, and what if it doesn't work, and all this stuff. And so what's really fun is that I know that audience so well, because I am that audience. And so this actually did not start as me, again, as with the rest of my career now, I did not start out trying to do this. The ADHD comics, I didn't do it I'm going to make a series and post them. This is my plan.
Oh, wow.
I made it for me. I made it to share with my friends. And the same thing with the anti-planner. These are exercises I've been doing. Most of them I've been doing for myself for years and years and years. Years before I started the anti-planner, I was already doing a bunch of these things. And
wow.
So I kept forgetting. I kept forgetting that I did them. And then I'd remember, and I'm like, oh my God, why did I stop doing that? That was such a great thing that I did. Let me bring that back. And so I started writing them down and keeping them in one place. And then one day I was kind of flipping through them, and I looked at there's a lot of stuff in here. I had at that point, there was at least 40, 45, I would say. And almost all of those ended up in the book. And so I had realized that I was creating my own coping mechanisms, which is a thing that I sort of got from my parents, which we could talk about a little later.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be able to share those with people, because I'd made a few of them into TikToks, and they went viral. They did really well. And so people really I realized too that what people really want is not just information, and it is advice, but people want to know how to make their lives easier. And people want to know how to make their lives easier in a way that's not going to require a tremendous amount of change. And the biggest thing that I've learned through ADHD coaching and through therapy these days has been that it is that by expecting yourself to change, expecting radical behavior change from yourself, especially for someone that struggles to stick with one system, expecting yourself to change is unrealistic, and it's setting yourself up for these cycles of disappointment and low self-esteem because you're trying to be somebody who you're not, and realizing I am someone whose system is collecting systems. Right.
That's right.
That was an idea that was given to me kind of through my ADHD coach, Dusty Shapura. Huge, tremendous impact on my ability to let go of the guilt of what felt like failures before, which now just felt like experiments.
Yeah.
Right. They were failed experiments, especially if they worked for a little bit. They were simply a tool that I needed in that moment to get over that thing. You know, just because I used a screwdriver once and the next thing I need, I need a hammer, I don't need a screwdriver. It doesn't mean the screwdriver failed or I failed. It just means I don't need it anymore for the task at hand. Maybe I'll pull it out when I have a similar problem.
That's a great analogy because that's so true, right? With ADHD, there's different tools that work at different times, but then also like there may be something that works for us for a really long time and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. And it's not that we failed. It's just like, oh, we found something that worked and now we shift, right? It's really about being adaptable and a level of self-acceptance and self-awareness is what I hear in there, which is partly why I love your book, because it's not just like lists of tools, but like, I just have to tell y'all, her book, first of all, as a therapist, I mean, I just think it's brilliant because she talks about the different feeling experiences of ADHD but breaks it down into like, I wouldn't even call them chapters, but like sections with a tab so you can find it easily because, with ADHD, we lose shit and can't find stuff. And like we tab our book, but then we can't find the tabs. But Dani, it's so brilliant how you broke it down into, and I wrote it down to make sure I could say them, but there's stuck, overwhelmed, unmotivated, disorganized, and discouraged. And then you have an extra section, which is super fun. And then, y'all, within this, like she takes it and identifies like the different feeling experiences inside of that. So it's not just overwhelm, but there's different experiences overwhelm.
Intimidated and overcommitted and like panicking, yes. Burnt out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you say, okay, if you're feeling overcommitted, go to this page and here's some strategy you can experiment with. And I'm like, that's brilliant.
I think that, thank you so much. Creating that system, right? I really like systems. And being able to sort things is fun. And so I have a big emphasis on also user experience. And I know that comes from my design background, where so much of this stuff, right? I designed it for me. I designed it with me in mind as far as would I use this? In the same way when I write emails, I'm like, would I read this whole thing? If I wouldn't, like, would I watch this piece of content I made? If I would scroll through it, if I didn't make it, why should anyone else watch it? Or why should anyone else read it? Or why should anyone else use it? And so with this book, realizing that if I just stuck 165 strategies just in here and said, have fun, pick one, whoa, the level of overwhelm I would feel, the level of indecision, I don't want that, right? So then I kind of, what I actually did was brain dumped all of these different emotions onto every emotion I could think of that could get in the way. And there's a ton that didn't make it into the book because they ended up getting combined with something else. So I was able to sort of figure out all of the things I could think of for why I would put stuff off. And then found out that, okay, some of these all fit underneath this sort of like umbrella emotion that isn't, angry or scared or those ones that we think of. But they were I would say like procrastinator emotions.
Yeah.
Realizing that if I could break it into, and even instead of just, I have 16 subsections that all of the activities are broken into. Instead of saying, okay, well, instead of 165 things to choose between, now you have 16 things to choose between. But the thing is, that's still too many. That's still too many to off the bat go to. So by going, hey, instead of that, you have 5.
Yeah.
You have 5 things to pick from. And then once you do one, it'll take you down into a little, one more choice. And then those choices are also like, so if you go into, stuck and there's difficulty getting started, indecisive, perfectionistic, and distracted. For each of those, right, there are little bullets of like I statements. And instead of being some generic, like has difficulty putting things down, or like has fears, criticism, and mistakes, does this stuff.
Yeah.
It's all I statements. It's you read them and it says, I'm afraid of not giving this my 100%. I'm afraid of being mediocre. I'm afraid of this, or I feel this way. So when people read it, they can recognize these are thoughts that I have had. Like, I don't have to sit here and do as much self-reflection. I can just read it and go, do I relate to this? And if they are able to relate to it, then they can flip to that section. And now they've got such a few to flip through rather than get overwhelmed by the entire bunch. And so that really was, from a user experience standpoint, what felt like the best use of navigation compared to even just going like, these are all the games, these are all the challenges, these are all the strategies. Like, that is not useful for people.
That is not.
You want to help people get unstuck. What they need to be able to do is figure out what is the roadblock, and then what are or the resistance. I call it. I just gave a talk yesterday about. I have a talk on this, how to get stuff done when you don't feel like it.
Yeah,
and it's about the toolbox, right? Of if you have three pieces of metal, you zoomed out three metal bits, and I say get them in the wall, and you take a hammer and you hit the first one, it goes in, awesome. You hit the second one, it doesn't go in. You hit the third one, it doesn't go in. You're like, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with me? I did it before. And you zoom in, and one of them's, they're both screws. One of them's a Phillips head and one of them's a flathead. And it's the resistance you're feeling is a different kind of resistance, and it requires a different kind of tool. And so if you can figure out what the resistance is, then you could pick the correct tool.
Oh, it's just so brilliant. It just is. Like, I have a lot of books on ADHD. I know, right? You're like,
I'll take the compliments any day. Thank you so much.
Well, that's why I want to talk to you so badly. You're the first author we've had on the show, but I was like, I've got to like meet with this woman because it's laid out. And one of the things that my listeners know, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I talk a lot with the people I coach and also my therapy clients that it's not only about the tools. The tools are important, but it's also about attending some of the deeper things going on. And that's really what you do. And in fact, there was even a part in here where, I wrote it down. Let me see. It was, you were talking about the thing you need to do is not your enemy. The thing you need to do is just something that needs to be done. And I think it was like maybe discouraged.
Neutral.
It's neutral, right? It's just this neutral thing that needs to be done. And it reminded me, I talk a lot with everybody about internal family systems, which is a type of therapy where we work with parts of ourselves and all parts are welcome, right? So there's no bad parts. Parts are just trying to help us do stuff. And it reminded me, like, your book just weaves right into that, where it's like, oh yeah, this task is just a neutral thing that needs to be done, not our enemy of like, you're killing me,
Well, and the story, I really think people respond well to metaphors and to storytelling, right? As humans, and especially people with ADHD, stories and humanizing things can really help. And so the story of the thing really is about this thing that can feel like a pain in the ass, that can feel like it's getting in the way of you doing all the fun stuff you could be doing instead. It feels like an obstacle or a challenge or something to resent or something to hate. Especially if it doesn't sound fun. And a lot of the time that's so colored and distorted by our own fears and insecurities and bad past experiences and our self-doubt and all of these things that make that thing feel bigger and scarier than it actually is, until you can really sort of like, zoom out and realize that, right, like you said, the thing is not your enemy, and that it's just something that needs to be done. And that if you can make it fun, if you can make interacting with it an enjoyable experience, whether that is through making something social and doing it with a friend, whether it's turning something into a challenge or a game, if you could make it so it's less like pulling teeth and more like support to get it on its way, then you're able to get that sense of like accomplishment and pride instead of resentment and anxiety and anger and fear. So I'm just really glad that that seems to have resonated with people, because people are like, I don't want to do stuff, but I will take care of this thing now that you've got a little Post-it note that
I know, right?
has a little cute face on it. Like now I'm taking care of something. It's not about me anymore. It's like I want to help this little thing. And so I've really been able to feel a sense of pride that something like a story can resonate to where it can change people's perceptions of the stuff that they've been dealing with their whole lives.
Well, it does. And it too, it addresses the deeper stuff, right? It's not just about the tool and strategy, but by doing that, by bringing in this story of the thing or metaphor, you're actually addressing the big feelings that are underneath, right? At one point in this section that we're talking about right now, you specifically say, like, we have so many, like you said, we have so many negative emotions tied to this that now we're scared to even approach the thing when it's really, like you said, not as scary as we think. And
the picture is like a fire breathing.
It is.
Like it's all cute.
It is. I know. The graphics are amazing in this book, y'all. Like it just like it's so cool. But it so often I talk a lot about it's not just about doing stuff. It's not just about the tools, but it's about the stuff beneath it. And that's really what I like so much about the Anti-Planner is it's not just a list of tools. Like you said, it's curated in a very intelligent way, broken down to like almost like I don't want to say flow chart because it's not like a flow chart, like the way that
I almost made a flow chart.
Yeah.
I almost made a flow chart, but it actually was not as helpful as the tabs I found.
Yeah, the tabs.
And it just kind of like muddied things a little bit. But the other thing that I thought was important, so when people are like, this is so well thought out, I go, if you knew how many hours went into, because this book took about 2,000 hours.
Oh my God.
And a huge, probably, yeah, it was a lot.
It was years. Break that down into years.
It's 1 year of full-time, 40 hours a week for a full year straight. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was a big project. I was doing towards the end there. I mean, so I do not recommend this. And if I was to redo one thing, it is right. I wanted to get this done as fast as possible because I had planned on releasing it. I had announced it at the my closing keynote at the International ADHD conference. I had pre-orders because in my mind, right, it was almost done. I had planned on ordering 500, either 500 or 1,000 of these. Is how many I had planned on ordering. And so the thing that I had made was really actually pretty simple. It didn't have, the level of like illustrations. It didn't have all this stuff. And everything was much less, had much less energy put into it. And I put it up for pre-order. And so quickly, I was hitting 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pre-orders. And I'm like, I'm not marketing this. Like, I'm not paying like any amount of money to like get the word out about this. People really just need it. And I'm like, this is going to be big. Like, I can tell this is going to be much bigger than I had anticipated. And I am capable of making this better.
Yeah.
Of making this prettier, of making this more, and not just thought out, but engaging, because I don't want pages to look the same. That's another thing that I cared about a lot, is a lot of books, right? A lot of workbooks, they have one table style, and that table style is utilized throughout the entire book. Now, from a brand consistency standpoint, and as a former graphic designer, that saves you time and energy, that allows you to have consistency throughout. Like, that's useful in a lot of ways. But if you're making a book specifically to go, I want every page to be its own little snack. I don't want anything to look the same, because it starts to get boring. It starts to get predictable. And so a lot of the tables are completely different. Some of them are like rainbows. Some of them are, are illustrated into little, some of them are like the distractions list, like they're little shapes, or the self-compassion pep talk. What am I upset about? What would I tell a friend? Right. And they're chat bubbles, and it's still a table. If you put lines through it, it's still a table, but it is a pretty table that makes you want to use it more.
Yes.
So I bring all this up because I knew I had that in me. But I had announced the book and I had planned to launch when I wasn't doing that, when I didn't have it on that level. But now I knew that's what I wanted, because it was one of the last, I'm not so sorry. This is, I think, interesting information.
No need for apologies here. No need.
Yes.
Unless you need to apologize for yourself.
Myself.
I did hear you stop myself. Yeah.
I heard. So I have these truth or dare pages.
Those are so fun.
So I had, which are prompts and challenges, right? But they're sort of, a lot of these things are framed in the context of games and ideas that people are already familiar with. And so I was working on the layout. This was one of the last layouts I had to do. And I was trying layouts, I was trying lettering, and I didn't like it. It didn't look good. And I stumbled into this look, the final one that ended up in the book. I'm like, this looks so cool. And I put it in the book and I flipped through it and I'm like, the rest of this isn't as cool as this. Like, it doesn't match. It doesn't match the level of talent and time that went into this one. And it shows. And I can't not use this because I like it so much, but I can't put it next to this other stuff because my brain is angry. Right. And so I really was like, well, now I got to pedal to the metal. Like, how fast can I get through this? And so I was working 10 to 16-hour days.
Whoa.
For months and months and months and months. And that is not oh my God, what a great work ethic, because I announced that it was running late and everyone was like, that's okay. Like, we totally get it. We've got ADHD. And I was sending out PDFs. Like, here's a PDF a week, or it started as every 2 weeks, then every week, so that you at least have something to work with. And actually, I found out from people that they appreciated that happening because it started them interacting with the book with just one activity at a time.
Yeah.
Instead of even getting, the whole book. So they kind of got a routine and habit of doing that. But I found out from people that they weren't mad, but I wanted to get it out as soon as possible. And so I was taking my meds, and I wasn't hungry. So I wasn't eating enough food and I wasn't drinking enough water, and I was hyper-focused. I wasn't standing up enough. And my body, like, really, I stopped taking care of myself. And I lost a lot of muscle tone in my legs to the point that I had to start using a wheelchair.
Oh my gosh.
I was on muscle relaxers for a different pain condition I've got. So it was the muscle relaxers combined with the lack of activity, the lack of exercise, lack of water, it was a perfect storm of bad nutrition, poor nutrition, and lack of movement. And I didn't realize I was losing muscle because I wasn't moving enough to notice that I was losing muscle. And so it was, and so I've spent the last year now trying to, at the gym and I have been, actively building muscle back up. But yeah, I would say a cautionary tale for working that many hours. But it was one where, again, I'm not sorry. God, the amount of guilt I feel for taking up too much space.
I know, right? I think you're speaking to the right crowd about that. But yeah.
So all that to just say that I'm so happy with the final product. I know that everyone I talk is self-publishing. That's the other thing. So self-publishing meant that I got to do this on my own timeline. It means that I got to pick out. I want tabs. I want ring binding because I hate having to hold open, stuff to write. And I want a pretty shiny cover that like catches my eye and I got to make all of those decisions. And I didn't have, I got reached out to by I won't name names, some of the biggest, most major publishing houses that there are. But they get to call shots. And I, at the end of the day, was like, I don't want anyone telling me that I can't open up the page and the first thing you see is this little like very faint writing that says, holy shit, I can't believe I actually finished this. Like, I don't have to take that out.
Right.
That it shows. I think that it feels so different because it hasn't been watered down by stereotypical, means of publishing.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story. That is just, first of all, it's such an
8 stories in one.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's such an ADHD story, not only because it's 8 stories in one, but just even the journey of doing it. And then, I think that's really common, Dani. A lot of us, we pull something together and we're like, okay, that's decent. But then, we know we're capable of more, but
yes,
but we're trying to get it done. And I I think a lot of us, I know Dani is also, so for those of you who are my listeners and you're in that camp with me who like, we did really well in school, achievement was one way we masked. Like, I think Dani's kind of in that camp of having been,
what would give you that impression?
yeah. Right. And so like for those of you in that camp with me, nothing against the people in the other camps, but this really speaks to the perfectionism, like, but not letting it get out of control, but also producing something of high quality, not just to get it done, And it's like finding a balance in that is what I hear you saying.
Well, this felt like an extension of me. That was this is so deeply personal. This was not a book about something. Like there's pictures, there's pictures like little, look, I'm like wearing the exact same little,
oh my gosh, you are wearing the same thing.
It's my uniform. It's my Steve Jobs turtleneck. But I am, I've got little like parentheses with like grayed out, italicized font of like, this is my inner monologue, like, so that you're there. It feels like I'm talking to you while you're reading the book a little bit. I've had people describe it as like, it feels like I've got a friend or a coach sitting next to me and like, helping encourage me and also keep it real. That's the other thing is I think that a lot of even well-meaning productivity advice out there can be so unknowingly toxic because of that, right? Amount of positivity that is sort of like, this is what people need to hear. People need to always hear that, like, you can do it and it'll be fine and you've got it, and don't realize that if that's what you're saying is going to happen every time. If you try hard, you can do anything. And in reality, what that does is set me up for it. Well, if I try and I don't do, then that means I am the problem. Like I have a defect. Like I am an issue, instead of telling people, as there is throughout the book, of like I've got a thing on speed cleaning, right? And
I love that one. That was
is to get some tennis shoes on and get your a drink and some like music or an audiobook that you like. But go around and get all the dishes in your house, go around and get all the trash in your house, and go around and get all the clothes. And then it's got, and then once you're done with that and put those away, big little piles of things that go into similar rooms, instead of like walking back and forth to, different rooms and stuff, put them together and then take those to the rooms they go, and then you can go from there. But it was really important to me to say, even if you just do steps 2 through 4, you would be so amazed at what your space can look like without dishes, trash, and clothes. Like, honestly, that's usually what it is. And it doesn't require organizing. It just requires putting stuff in a hamper, putting stuff in the trash, taking stuff to the kitchen. And so, but I think that telling people that, like, even if you do an incomplete version of this, it can still feel like success.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you really go after, like, I think it's early in the book, you really go after this idea. And this is something we talk a lot about in my program, but also on the podcast, is like, failure is not failure. Like, it's just, everything's an experiment. Like you said, it's just information. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to try this. Or, oh, today I only have energy for dishes, clothes, and trash. And it's not that you failed. It's just like, okay, I'm honoring my energy today. And also like, only half this strategy was effective for me today in this moment. Versus like, I failed. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I talk about in my, the talk that I gave yesterday, is that, like, if you've ever played Wordle or Hangman or anything of that, like, if you guess the letter and the letter is not in the word, you don't think, oh my God, I'm so bad at this game. It's just, that's not it. That's not it. And now you have information to get you closer to what it is. Right. And so the ability to reframe that swing and a miss as information as to what does not work. I think that is right. The 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb kind of thinking can really be beneficial. But I mean, it can get discouraging if you're like, well, I tried 3 things and none of them work. Yeah. How am I supposed to feel like I want to bother trying anymore? And so that's why, so I will say that the I would say the book gets kind of like less fun the deeper you go, because it goes from stuck and like difficulty getting started, but like, let's turn things into games. By the end of it, right, you got discouraged is the order. I don't know if people have realized this or not, but the order that the book goes is actually like there in a particular order for a particular reason, because discouraged is like when you're at the, is the back of the book, you're at your low. And a lot of those are more like self-reflective things or mindset shifting things. There's the discouraged section is therapy. There's a bunch of therapy exercises back there. It calls out which things are brought from what areas of therapy. I've got some like, and not as a I admit, not as a substitution for
no. Yeah.
But also the knowledge that not everyone can afford to go to art therapy. Exactly. Not everyone people might be able to benefit from this stuff. But who wouldn't buy a whole therapy workbook with boring tables and stuff? So being able to bring people, because I'm like, I can't convince you to do something that'll make stuff fun if you think you suck as a person. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
You have to get yourself out of that mindset, out of that way of thinking, before you can consider doing something lighthearted to make the thing fun. And I think that people who haven't been to that deep, dark place of like self-resentment might not understand what you need in that moment. Because if you haven't been there and you're trying to tell people what to do, but you have not been in that deep, dark pit of despair, then like you're not going to give advice. You're going to be able to just go, don't fall in the pit.
Yeah, right.
Don't fall in the pit. You're like, I'm already in the pit.
You're like, I'm not in the pit. Don't you see me in the pit?
Yeah, and I don't need your what feels like not quite condescending.
No.
Because a lot of times it is meant with like genuine help, because they think they're being helpful by telling you how not to fall in the pit. When reality is like, I say time and time again, like, I'm not going to tell you not to procrastinate. I would be such a hypocrite. I wrote this book and I procrastinate all of the time. This is more of a like, so you procrastinated. Here's what, and to the point that you are feeling stressed out about your inability to do the thing. Because the reason we procrastinate also is because often it has worked for us in the past.
Yeah.
If procrastinating didn't work, we would never do it.
That's right.
It does work. It creates that amount of tension and anxiety that fires up our amygdala and scoops us up into action.
Correct. It does. When we talk about the interest-based nervous system, we talk about different ways to like bring it online. Novelty is one, which as you were talking about your different like tables and stuff, like every page being different. Seriously, y'all, every page is pretty much different. Like it's fantastic for the ADHD brain. It's like, shiny page. Ooh, this shiny page. Ooh, shiny page. It's like, yes. And so that like there's novelty to help, but then we know that another thing that can help our interest-based nervous system is a sense of urgency. And so what you're saying, Dani, is like procrastination works because we're creating that sense of urgency, right? Like it just,
and also I'm going to be so efficient with my time.
Yeah.
Because I could have fun. Oh no, I only have an hour to do this thing. And I get it done in an hour and I cut corners to get it done. Versus I've got 6 hours to do this thing. And I always joke that I'm like, I'm a gas. I will like fill up the amount of space that I am given if I've, got the thing. I had it, my first talk I ever gave, I actually started 2 months in advance. 2 months in advance. I went to the coffee shop. I wrote 14 like different half talks and then one final like regular talk. And I was giving it, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Like I want this to give me the feelings of like a really good TED talk. And this is not, I want people to laugh and I want people to cry. And like, this isn't it. This isn't it. And I went but it was done technically. And I went to go fly out to the conference in New York. I was sitting in the, in my gate at the airport and my flight kept getting delayed. It got delayed 6 hours and I restarted my talk and I wrote it in the in the airport where my flight was delayed. My flight ended up getting canceled. So I had to come back the next morning.
Oh my God.
I wrote more in the thing, wrote it on the plane, wrote it in the taxi or on the way to the hotel and was done. And it was great. And it was the best version of what I was trying to say. And I wrote it the day before. And so what I have now realized is that giving myself 2 months, it's too much time.
Yeah.
It's really, it's not conducive. So when I've got stuff down to the last minute and I'm all stressed, I have friends who are like, this is when you do your best work.
Yeah.
This is how you operate.
Yes.
Not be stress-free, but like you are just being honest with yourself now.
Correct. No, it's so true. I just did a launch. I did a 3-day live launch. And, normally I try and plan them out in advance. And, because it was like 2 hours every day. And I make slides and I have all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll get to that. And I just didn't. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got like 2 days until I'm doing all this stuff. But that was the best damn launch I've had. Because I was speaking from like my thinking brain was just the way it was like flow. It's like, okay, here we go. And,
Yeah.
It's just how our brains
Clear-headedness.
It was total clear-headedness. And I was like, wow, I just don't think this clearly that far in advance. Like it was just like.
I think it's also because like if you can get into that, like you said, the flow state where the rest of the world melts away because nothing else matters.
Right.
At this state. When I am trying to do something way in advance, other things still matter. I'm trying to fit this in to all of the other things in my life rather than giving it my undivided attention. And so the best way to get in the same way that like I get so much more done and better work out of myself when I've got nothing else on my plate for the day than when I'm trying to schedule out little blocks of time to work on stuff.
Correct. It's so true. I did a presentation back when I was working with nurses at the American Association for Critical Care Nurses. And that one, they did not tell us way in advance. It was like 2 weeks before. They're like, hey, we need your slide notes. And I was like, what? I didn't know I was going to have to like do that. And so it was like, whatever. But then I did one last winter for the PT Association in Minnesota, the American PT Association in Minnesota. And it blew because like they wanted it way in advance. They wanted my slide notes like 3 or 4 months in advance. And it was like the worst presentation. My timing was off. And I was like, it was like legit the worst presentation I've ever given. And I talk all the time. Like I do talks and formal and informal. And it was just like, I appreciate you saying that because I didn't know why. I was like, it just blew. It was like, it was horrible. And I'm like, I'm still the same person. Like,
I was just talking to my friend literally yesterday. I was giving a talk for some librarians in Florida, and they needed my slides. Like it was like at least a month in advance. And I was so upset because I was like, what? Why do I have to send this to you? Do you not know that like I'm going to be making edits up until literally like 40 minutes before I hop on the call, 15 minutes before our call? Like I will be making tweaks and making things better because I can't have something finalized that far in advance, right?
No.
So yeah, I absolutely get that. So the urgency and then the novelty and back to this, it's like the Ibnu thing, right? With the interest also, like things being interest based. So not to just like bring it back to anti stuff, but I had opened up the book to this DIY productivity.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that I saw that yet. That is so.
Also, it's one where you go over like which concepts do I find engaging and motivating, circle all that apply, and it's got like ideas and creativity, gratification, humor, art, chance, money, competition, rewards, that kind of stuff. And then it's what interests do I enjoy? So, maybe it's music or drawing or apps or home decor, and there's space to put like what other topics or interests you might be passionate about. And then there's space on how to like potentially like gamify them, different ideas for strategies on doing that, as well as here are some examples of like accountability betting or procrastination hit lists. And here's how those interests and those concepts were kind of put together in order to create these things. Now, what's hilarious is I would have loved if I would have come up with this list before I came up. This was one of the last things I made in a book. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if I would have just had this like pick and play and like pick a couple of these and see what like random thing I can think of, that could have been like really awesome. But I wanted to also be able to give people the chance to recognize that creating your own strategies or taking something that somebody else has done and making it interesting to you
Yeah.
will make it so much more likely that you'll want to use it, right? So like with
Yeah.
procrastination hit list, where I make a 9x9 grid and
No.
doodle my most procrastinated to-dos that have been like eluding me, so elusive. I've been putting them off forever and they've been on the run, and I doodle them as like little cartoon villains. And then when they're done, and you like stab them with your pencil, or, and so there's a little hole through it instead of like checking off a to-do list. And like that has like a physical gratification, like action with the stabbing. It's got like that creativity, novelty, sorry. But it also allows me to use humor and cartooning and drawing and other things that like I find particularly fun. Someone who hates art might not want to do that, but there might be something else that they really enjoy involving, I don't know, spreadsheets or something. So.
Right. It's true. Everyone's going to have their own way of doing it. And that's really cool. I totally missed that. So I think we might have nodded to this, but the deal with anti-planner is this is not something you use every day, nor is it something that like you don't read. It's not a book you read cover to cover. This is like,
no.
This is like literally like tabs based on those 5 different feeling states, and then breaks them down, like we said, with like different strategies. And then, as you said, like as you go through the book, the feelings are there's more internal work that needs to happen along with the feeling state that's going on. And so,
yes.
So I totally miss that, because it's like you're just looking through and you're like, oh, this one's really fun. And so that's the other thing that's really happy for ADHD is like you're not having to read it cover to cover, because most of us wouldn't if you just listed out the strategies, right? Like you said.
It feels like the thrill of discovery is still there. So I kind of joke that this is like a productivity cookbook.
Or treasure hunt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you don't read a cookbook cover to cover.
No.
You go, I want to make, I mean, I don't know if people still use physical cookbooks, but but being able to go like, oh, I want to make I'm in the mood to make like a dessert or something, like you're not going to flip through an entire book, you know, specifically like what you're looking for. And so I think that was one of the things that I struggle with regular books, is that if I don't, you start at the beginning, you don't just pick through necessarily which chapter, which has been a more useful thing I found over the years with nonfiction books, is reading the chapters that interest me.
That's what I do.
Necessarily, but like I've got so many books that are on my shelf that I started and didn't finish, and I see them and I don't want to pick them up again because I have that feeling of like failure, or I'm not going to remember what I read last time, so I'd have to start it over. Like I have these negative associations with books that feel like failure, versus when I open up a book and I just have to read one page, and that one page is bulleted with headings and bold text and examples and pictures. And it's very easy to feel a sense of accomplishment when that's all that's asked of you is to read one page. And I think especially with our, again, across the world, whether you've got ADHD or not, we are used to short form content these days. And we are used to, bingeable episodes or, flippable TikToks or whatever it is. And not to say that like none of us have attention spans anymore, but when you're looking to get something done, I don't want to have to use an entire chapter to explain to you how to overcome a problem that you're facing in this moment. I want you to get back to the problem at hand. But I also know that giving people something that will be forever useful, rather than like a planner that, oh, I forgot about it for a week and now there's a blank page and I didn't get to it or whatever. And now there's a bunch of blank pages and I'm just not going to use this. At a certain point, it's absolutely unusable, because now it's the next year and this is completely unusable for, the next 6 years or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Leap year. So to have something that's like, you could lose this for 2 years and pick it back up and still find it helpful.
Totally.
Is useful for people who lose stuff.
Well, it is. Well, and in the book, you even say, like, this is a book you tell your friends and family that you have in case you forget about it. It's in that section where you talk about, like, the barriers people have.
Self-defeating thoughts.
And you're like,
and to help.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say to help people, telling people, your friends or family, that so that when they hear you talk about because we talk about we talk about feeling overwhelmed or feeling stuck often, or whatever it is. And instead of them feeling the need to come up with answers to our and solutions to our problems, and if they're not, neurospicy, they may very well give you unhelpful umbrella advice of something that would work for them that's going to make you feel more discouraged because they're going to give you advice that's not tailored to your brain, versus them being able to remind you that you have a tool where they feel like they can empower you for finding your own solutions rather than feeling responsible for helping you fix it and then feeling like confused why their, neurotypical strategy didn't work for you.
Right. No, totally true. And that's what I like is like, it isn't this book that you have to like read cover to cover, but you can have it somewhere. I mean, this might've been when we were talking before we started, but people having it on their desk, like just even having it on their desk, and one, having it on your desk, just the visual of like, I got this is helpful. But then also having it on your desk, like, oh crap, I can't do it. In fact, this morning before we met, right, like, forget what I was calling it for a while. I can't even remember, but like when you have an appointment coming and you can't get anything done before the appointment, I can't remember what I was.
Oh, I was doing that yesterday.
Yeah,
it's the waiting.
Yeah, the waiting. Yeah, there was something I was
a word for it,
calling it, but yeah. Anyway, and I was like, well, I can't get anything done. I'm so excited.
Wait mode.
Yeah, wait mode or something. And I was like, I'm so excited. I'm not getting anything done. I'm like, damn. And I was like, oh, Dani's book is right here. I'll just flip through it. I was like, and it's one of those kind of handy things. But I also want to say real quick, and I wrote this down to make sure, because the book starts with like a whole page that really drives this home. And I want people to hear this. I know that we've talked about this on the show before. We certainly talk about it in my program, but your worth is not measured in productivity. And I love that you say that because it's a book about helping productivity. And so often with ADHD, people tried to tie our worth into our productivity, and then we struggled with productivity. And so our worth was like in the pooper. Mm-hmm. And yet you start the book pointing this out. Like, this isn't about you becoming a better human. It's just about getting the shit done you need to get done.
And to do it because you want to, not because you're afraid you have to. A lot of times we're getting stuff done because we're afraid that we'll be judged or we'll be in trouble if we don't do it.
Yeah.
It's the fear. It's fear. A lot of our productivity is often driven right by, I'm going to clean up this area because I don't want someone else to think it's messy, or I'm going to submit my timesheet because my boss sent me an email and they're mad at me, or I'm going to, and so we're finding, or at least I have found, that using those as motivators, as negative motivators, has been so challenging, because I assumed that other people were valuing me based on my ability to live up to their expectations. And my expectations then got set by their expectations. So when I disappointed them, or I was disappointed myself. And I really think that people understanding that there's no visual, in the way that there's a visual if your work is getting done, or if your or your house is messy, or your desktop is desktop of your computer is just like, everything is untitled and screenshot, and it's messy. That's easy to see, but it's really difficult to see the contents of people's hearts, right? So many people who struggle with productivity are also the nicest people you'll ever meet, the most non-judgmental people you'll ever meet, the most caring, a lot of caring people and generous people, and the people that make you laugh. Like, there's so much, and thoughtful and kind and authentic and vulnerable, and all of these qualities that make up who you are and how you impact others beyond just what you got done.
Right.
And so I really think that people reminding themselves that you as a person and how you impact people's lives goes beyond your ability to do the thing.
Yeah, it really does. And I love that you start out saying that, because it's really important people hear that message, right? Because it's so important. And there is work to be done there, right? I mean, that's what the whole discouraged section starts to point to, is like, the stuff, like some of this stuff. But this is it's such a great tool, right? It's like a recipe book, like you said, of all the ways you can do it. Okay, so
it the Bible for procrastinators.
love it. Love it.
So that was one of my favorite. I did want to.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I think I might have called it to the people in my program. I was like, this is like basically your Bible for getting shit done. Like that was what I called it. And yeah, in fact, I did it. I don't think I told you this. Like as a bonus for one of the when my cart was open for my program, as a bonus one of the days, I was like, I will give you Dani Donovan's book. I will send it to your house, like as a bonus for joining. Because I was like, this book is the like bomb diggity. I'm like, it is like the best book ever. And
I have people I've talked to who are like, it is like not required, but required reading for my patients. Where like if they don't have the means to get it for themselves, I will get them the book because we use it in session. When they use it to point out what's wrong. And I was like, didn't see that coming. But I've heard from multiple veterans, VAs or whatever from administration who contact me and are getting copies for patients with brain injuries.
Yes,
because there are people who, especially people who are neurotypical, who got brain injuries and now have ADHD symptoms and are I can't imagine what it would be like to know what it feels like to exist and operate in a world where this has not been your default state for forever. Yeah. And then to have that like taken away from you to then have to figure out how to come to terms with getting stuff done when you used to be able to rely on, your brain to dependably like help do that for you. And so for people who, and I've heard from some of the people who had, brain injuries who are able to say that like, I have hope now where I had felt like I had lost my ability to believe that I was capable of doing anything. And I'm like, so cool. crying over in the corner. But like, I'm so glad it means so much to people because it meant a lot to me. And again, when you make something that like you are passionate about because you made it for yourself, because it helped you. And even if no one bought this, I would still, use the shit out of it because I made it for me, versus when you make something for other people that is not necessarily something that you would use or that is directed at you, you're going to be a lot less in tune with what people need and spend a lot less time on the planning process before the content even started.
Right. Yeah, it's totally true. I love that you're helping so many people with it. And it's really fun that
I got to thank my parents also.
Like, well, that's what I was going to say. You told in your book, you like thanked your parents for, you put it something like, for using games and challenges to help me learn, which by the way, as you know, Dani, but in case the rest of you don't know, one of the ways that we work with our interest-based nervous system is through challenge or competition. And so like your whole book creates challenges and games and stuff. But okay, so like your parents didn't know you had ADHD because you told me you were diagnosed in college. So how did they know like to create game? Like, tell me about that. They create games.
My mom in fifth grade asked my teacher if she thought I could have ADHD, and my teacher told her she can't have ADHD. She's too smart.
Oh yeah, that's
which the ick, right?
Yeah, same.
Anyway, but so my parents have a lot of the same struggles that I do, but they knew from a young age that my brother and I both respond well to being able to turn things into games. So like when I was 2, my mom was pregnant on bed rest with my brother, and I was learning my alphabet, and she had those little magnets that were letters. That I feel like everybody had. That's like
you put them on the fridge.
Is the font. They're like field font. Yeah. And so you put them on the fridge, and she would be on the thing, and she's like, "Go get me a B," and I'd like run to the fridge and bring her back a B, and she'd go get me an F, and I'd run to the fridge and bring her back an F. And so,
Brilliant.
right, rather than, right. And my brother, that didn't work as well for him. Like he didn't, that he was not interested in learning his alphabet that way, but he loved baseball. Yeah. He was like a little 3 or 4 year old, like love 4 year old, loved baseball. And he had this big blue bat, and um, they made big little, like big posters with just a sheet of paper, A, B, C, D, E, and they lined the hallway with them. And they would say, Trevor, go point it at R. And he would go and touch the R, and they go, yep, time to bat. And he'd run back, and he'd get to swing the little bat in the hallway and hit the little, hit his little ball in the hallway. And so and when my stepson was learning his alphabet, he didn't know his ABCs, but he knew the names of all 151 Pokemon.
Oh my gosh.
Like Pokemon, right? And I'm like, how do you know all of these Pokemon and you don't know your ABCs? And so I took my iPad, and I didn't have it in me to try, just like attempt to like draw all of these by hand.
Yeah.
But I put, I set it as the background of my iPhone or background of my iPad so it wouldn't move. And then I put a piece of paper over it, and traced the Pokemon. And then he was very sensitive about like, it doesn't look right with the colors. So I actually took the correct colored markers and did the outlines of them. And then I put them down, and he got to pick. He had like a sheet of paper where he would test out the markers and was like, that's not the right color. That's the right color. And then he got to color in the lines. And so it looked really great because the outlines were already done. So he got to feel like they looked amazing, right? And they were the correct colors. And I had the first letter of each of these Pokemon like really big. And so then we'd hide the Pokemon all over the house, and we'd play hide and seek. And I made a few different games, and he would go and, I found Bulbasaur. I'm like, Bulbasaur, what does that start with? He go, B. And I'm like, what sound does that make? And he goes, buh, buh, buh. And then I go put it in the bee house. And I have little, things with bees. You'd have to go put it in the house. And then we had some where we'd like battle each other, and he'd have to tell me what letter it started with first. And so really that like, and now he's in 4th grade, and he still, really likes drawing, but he's having a hard time memorizing, the Revolutionary War vocab. Yes. And so I'm like, I'm going to read this to you. I'm going to have you listen to what it is. And I'm going to give you a big flashcard, and I want you to draw me a picture, draw me a cartoon of this thing I just told you. So he'll draw a little cartoon, and then I'll have him, write on the back, like what it is. And then I'll write out the names, and then I'll do a matching game where I'm like, I'll match up these things to the drawings, and then he'll do that. And then I'll hold up the drawings, and then I'll say, tell me what this is. And he'll tell me what it is. And then eventually go to the thing where I hold up just the word and I say, tell me what this is. And so being able to utilize interest to help kids learn is such a, and he comes back and he gets, 96 on his test.
Wow.
When we had gone through the study guide initially, he got like a 20. So
right.
It's been a concept that has existed in me since I was younger, because my parents did do kind of interest-based learning. And so being able to utilize that into how can I make interest-based productivity has been really helpful.
It's just brilliant. That's just a brilliant approach to helping yourself, how your parents helped you and your brother, and then how you've been able to pass that on to your stepson. It's just so beautiful. And it really recognizes like what people, like not all people learn the way our schools teach. In fact, probably most people don't learn the way our schools teach, was a whole nother episode. But
well, especially ADHD brains, right?
Correct.
Like asking me to sit down and just listen to you and remember the thing that you told me verbally, because they don't take notes yet.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They're too young to be taking notes.
Right. And I don't learn. Right. And I don't learn through listening. Like I have to pay a super hard attention when you're talking to make sure I'm taking in what you're saying. But like I learn by writing.
I need subtitles, man. Yeah. Like I've got auditory processing issues. I can't handle, if you want me, to listen to your verbal instructions, I need to take notes, or you're not going to be happy with what you get back.
Totally true.
And so I really think that people being able, I think people being able to do that is so helpful, because it again empowers kids to be able to recognize that you are not a failure because you don't understand the way that your teacher taught you. You can come up with your own way to learn if that's just not working for you.
Yeah.
And so I really think that that's the attitude that I was able to kind of bring to this project, which was that attitude shift of if something, well, my dad's also an engineer. My dad's an engineer. And I really think that that does speak to and you know, he built our decks growing up. He helped, I actually, entered, I was a Girl Scout, my brother was in Boy Scouts, and in Boy Scouts they got to do like the Pinewood Derby, like they got to do racing things. And I was always like, I want to do that. We don't get to do that in Girl Scouts. And my dad got me an extra kit, and I made one, and I went anyways, and they saw that I had it, and they let me race with everybody. And I got an honorable mention ribbon. Right. The honorable mention ribbon. I didn't get first, second, or third, but I got the honorable mention. A bunch of the boys were all mad. I still have that ribbon. And I hung it in all my cubicles as like, don't let them tell you what you can't do.
Love it.
Right. Don't let someone else's like idea of who's allowed to be in charge of what thing, mean that you are limited to those things. And I know that my dad, again, being supportive in those moments was, and, not just saying like, oh, you can't do it because that's, for Boy Scouts. He was like, I'll go get you I'll get you a kit.
That's
and him also, right, like with the building of the decks at our houses and building of his own solutions, really did teach me that, like, if you want something that isn't there, you could just make it. If you want something that doesn't exist, you can just make it. And I think that attitude, that's really an attitude. Of not just I have to go find it and I can't find it anywhere, so I can't have it. It's a initiative and I think that's really an empowering thought.
It's a super empowering thought, and it's clearly what you did with your book. And I'm so grateful that you came on the show today. This is so great to talk to you. So I know, right? I'm like, anyway. So anything in the works that you want us to know about?
Yes. So this is, I haven't like officially announced it anywhere, but I have decided that I'm okay with mentioning it on the occasional podcast. I am making a video podcast with my husband, that's called Struggle Busters, How to Get Shit Done When You Don't Feel Like It. And the episodes are all going to be about, like, each will be a different boring adult's task. So our first one is doing laundry. We've got doing dishes. We've got going to sleep when you don't feel like it, eating vegetables when you don't feel like it. And we'll break down why it's hard, what creative solution, like specific creative out of the box solutions might actually help. And then we're going to pick an experiment for what we're going to try so we can put our money where our mouth is, and then come back the next week and let everyone know how it went and what worked and what didn't work, because I think it's also going to be important for people to hear what didn't work. I want people to hear someone that they potentially, look up to, telling them, I did this thing that I talked about and it didn't work, and here's why. And that thing might have been, I didn't have time, or all this other stuff came up, or I didn't have energy, or it didn't sound fun anymore. And I think that people need to hear that and be given that permission of, everything doesn't work for them every week. So this advice in this podcast is not about telling me what to do and expecting it to all work out. So I'm hoping that relatability and the stories that we're going to get to tell, and the realistic expectations versus a like general life advice, because the idea is then we're eventually going to have this big list of activities. So it's like, I'm having a hard time with this one thing. Let me go see if there's a Struggle Busters episode so that they can click on it and listen to it. Because it's like the anti-planner, but with a video podcast.
I love it. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I can hardly wait till you do laundry and going to bed when you don't want to. Like, those are my two. For me, it's putting away laundry, but we're like totally way beyond it. Yeah. Like,
we go go into those. We've got grocery shopping, and like we have a list of like 100. We're gonna try and pare it down, but we've got planning a date night. We've got like a whole laundry list, if you will. It was really fun brainstorming all the stuff we never feel like doing, and brainstorming the gripes that go along with each one. Because in the same way that the anti-planner is, the emotions are phrased, I am having a hard time with this, or I don't want to do this. The gripes that we call them, the gripes that we go through of the problems and the roadblocks that we come up with, each one are still going to be phrased as I don't have enough energy, or it's really boring. Like it's still phrased in that first person perspective so that people will hopefully find it as relatable and easy to digest as the anti-planner.
That's cool. So Dani, you've got your book, The Anti-Planner, and it's available on your website. I know that, right? And
yes. And there's a clean version also.
There's
no
a clean
cussing
version. Oh yeah, because she's got some swears, which are delightful. But we
not excessive, but they are there.
They are. Yeah. It's not obsessive at all. It's just every once in a while, and it really you're like, yeah, that's correct. Use that.
So, emphasize it.
Very, very well placed. But what's your website? So people who are listening, and then we'll put it in the show notes.
So either ADHDdd.com, which is ADHD and then my name is Dani Donovan, or DaniDonovan.com will also take you there. But people, DaniDonovan will misspell one or both of those a lot. So ADHDdd was often easier. But yeah, I've got my ADHD comics. I've got my TikTok, a lot of my TikToks there, and people don't realize, they're like, oh, I don't have TikTok. I go, they're embedded. You can watch them even if you don't have a TikTok account on my website. So for people who want to see my top ones but don't want to sign up for TikTok, you can watch them on my website.
Yeah. Well, and if I remember right, I think I signed up for your I know I signed up for your newsletter, but I think I've gotten emails from you with the PDFs for different things, right? Because you've got do you have PDFs on your website with different?
Oh, right. Yes, that is new. That just launched. With the or with Black Friday. Yeah. So there's now a digital bundle of 30 PDFs. It's not the entire book. It is not the whole book, because but it is 30 digital PDFs you can get on my website as well. And those are antiplanner.com/shop.
Okay, /shop. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so /shop will show the anti-planner and the clean version and the bundle.
Cool.
But if you buy the anti-planner, you should also get the bundle emailed to you for free. So
that's why I'm getting it for free. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, I get all these PDFs for free. I'm like, this is really great. I see. It's not just because I joined your
I don't want to make people buy it 2 times.
Yeah. No, I got you. It's because I see, because I bought your book. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. But okay. So how will we be able to find your podcast?
Right now, I just started our first YouTube channel, which is at the Anti-Boring Project on YouTube. And so we and actually no. I just realized I actually signed up for all the Struggle Busters accounts. Normally I had to tell people to go to my YouTube channel. But if you look up Struggle Busters on YouTube, Struggle Busters YouTube, let me make sure that this is a thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a link,
and then put it in the show notes.
And I'll put it in the show notes, because that way we can have some followers. There's nothing in there yet, but stay tuned.
Stay tuned, because this is a big deal, y'all. For those of us with ADHD, this is like complete brilliance. So, Dani, thank you so incredibly much for being on the show. It is a true honor to have you here. Your book is amazing, and I'm truly, as an ADHD woman, grateful for it, but also as ADHD coach and ADHD therapist, like, oh my gosh, it is just, so thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
That's awesome. All right. Thanks. So y'all, if you're not following yet, make sure you follow the Self-Love Woman Way podcast, and be sure to share, especially this episode. All right, y'all. Take care.